4D, 5D building information modelling demonstration presentation. My name is Matthew Edwards. I'm the Managing Director of Project Programme Management. Been in existence for just under 2 years, dedicated to BIM and also claims as well. We're the Ireland distributors for Synchro software, and I'll just pass over to John. John is the European Sales Manager. Just like an intro, John.
Yes, Synchro's been going for 10 years. Started as a service within an organisation that wanted something to help them do project management, and then developed on to being a software, which has gradually been developed over the last few years, and has come to fruition over the last 2 or 3 years to being a product that is a must-have product, and has started to really lift off worldwide. And I come here with support Matthew, trying to get Ireland to really take it up.
Okay, thanks, John. So, just look at the agenda on this PowerPoint presentation. Just look at who is Synchro, what is BIM, for some people might know it all, some people might not know anything at all. What is 4D, looking at Synchro and Primavera. Primavera is a planning and project control tool, the product, and some contact details as well. Synchro's mission is to deliver a software that serves the construction delivery team and survives the dynamics of everyday life in the construction industry. Synchro currently offers construction simulation, modelling at colleges and universities, 4D building information modelling, and lead consultancies, architects in more than 100 major construction companies in more than 65 nations among 6 continents. So, what is BIM? It is a process of generating and managing builder data during its life cycle. Okay? It typically uses 3-dimensional real-time dynamic building modelling software to increase productivity in building design and construction. The process produces the building information model, also abbreviated BIM, which encompasses building geometry, spatial relationships, geographic information, and quantities and properties of building components. Also, it is more than just changing software. It requires changes to traditional phases and more data sharing. And BIM is able to achieve such improvements by modelling representations of the actual parts and pieces being used to build a building. This is a substantial shift from the traditional 2D CAD method. An important word in the BIM world is interoperability. Okay, so when we touch on interoperability, a lot of software at the moment is like in the 3D world. We're looking at AutoCAD, Autodesk products, ArchiCAD, all of this sort of stuff. And that's fundamentally where it's created at 3D stage. But what Synchro does though, it acts as a third-party software where it takes in this 3D information and also puts against it the Gantt chart as well, going back to Primavera, I just discussed before. So we're looking now at interoperability, okay? So for BIM to work, different software has to be able to work together to facilitate the IFC open specification that's been produced. So IFC is a very universal formatted file created by the United States Air Force back about 10 years ago, and IFC is what's commonly used now between all these different systems in 3D, 4D and 5D. Okay? So that's called Industry Foundation Classes. Okay, so what is 4D, 5D construction? Okay, so it brings together, as I said before, 3D design, 4D, which is the 3D plus a program. People sometimes refer to program as a schedule as well. Okay. 5D, which is costs and resources / program. Okay. Now 5D can happen at different stages. It can happen at estimating stage, or it can happen at live contract stage as well. Okay. Most contractors in Ireland would use, in my eyes, would use the 5D estimating stage. Okay. So we create the estimate, we do a bit of quantities takeoff in AutoCAD quantity takeoff, and then we move over to the costs into the activities for the actual the Gantt chart, the program as such as well. So in theory, the 5D is placed into the Gantt chart. Okay, so we'll just come to the Gantt chart in a minute. Okay. But obviously 5D contains the 4D information as well. Okay, so what Synchro does as software is that just looking here on Synchro, it actually takes in a schedule, also called as a program as well. It takes in a 3D design and also cost. So that's basically what we're looking at there is 5D, okay? What happens then is that it brings out a management, construction and supply team attributes as well. So Synchro is used quite a lot on site as well, okay? A lot of contractors use Synchro for just possibly for tendering purposes, but it can be used on site as well because it's management, construction and supply team interoperability as well.
And I say that's where the real power comes in Synchro, is when you're moving on to projects, because you can monitor your projects in real time to see where your issues are and how you can overcome your issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what I'm just showing here on the PowerPoint slide is when we open it, this is basically Synchro here. Okay, so what we have is that we have a navigation tool here on Synchro, and this is where a lot of information comes in from the 3D model. This is our Gantt chart in this area here. So we have all our activities. This is what contractors are using today. Okay, and a lot of project managers as well. Where we have our activities which place into this Gantt chart. Okay, so this is our calendar running across here, and this is where all activities will come in. This area here, this is our 3D viewer. So this, when we import the model into Synchro, it actually comes into this area here, and then you have a grid system there as well. Okay, so it comes in as being built to scale. Okay. So just showing you there, just on this next slide, what we're showing is that we're showing importation of Primavera, okay? So when Primavera comes in, it comes into this area here, which is the Gantt chart, okay? So when we do a Primavera import, okay? And then we can bring into it the calendars, the tasks, okay, on the construction site, and also the resources on the construction site, which is all kept in Primavera, activity codes, risks, also the costs as well. And then we also bring the links as well, which is obviously the logic of how we build it. Okay. Now we also bring in resource assignments, activity codes, and task constraints. Okay.
Just going to say,
yep.
We also bring in ASTA amongst the project, so it's not just restricted to the primary.
Yep. So we actually, when we actually import in this on this one here, this particular one is a Primavera file. We're bringing calendars, tasks, and all the attributes which we just already selected. Okay, and now what we have now is that we actually have all our activities into the Gantt chart. Okay, so we can see the logic linking for each activity, we can see the summary bars, and most importantly, we can actually see site infrastructure, initial site fencing, move site fencing. So each of these activities have now come in, and this is what the contractor would have tendered for. Okay, and he's actually doing on site as well. Okay, so with hoists, we have internal hoists, which are temporary works, and we also have substructure. Excuse me. So that's our Gantt chart. Also as well, we can also export out as well, out of Synchro. So if you do make any adjustments in the actual Gantt chart schedule area here, we can also export out as well.
The important thing is you can import back in the changes, and if your members probably have changed any code names, it will stay out.
And you can also create the program in Synchro as well, can't you, John?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Where are we next? So we've done it. We can export to Primavera, Microsoft Project, and ASTA Power Project as well. Primavera's used a lot in America especially, and also in pharmaceutical projects, oil and gas projects. ASTA Power Project, it's very popular in the UK. It's very popular over in Ireland as well. But each of them do the same thing as well, and also Microsoft Project. So we can bring in all different types of files into Synchro. So it's easy to use as well on importing 3D models. So what we have to do, simplistically, on Synchro, because it's very easy to use, is that all we do is hit the file tab, and we go import, and we can either bring a 3D file in DWF, DWG format, or we can bring the IFC file in as well, which is our interoperable file. Okay. Obviously, just looking here as well, that's the power project we can bring in. PMA NetPoint, which is based in Seattle, that's a new kiddie on the block as far as planning and scheduling is concerned, and obviously Primavera as well.
Yeah, there's another number of other products and SAP products that can output in XML or Excel format, which we can import in as well. So we're fairly open to what we're getting in the system.
Can I ask, Martin, the machine that has Synchro on it,
Yeah.
does it need to have the planning software on it also, or just can that plan it and send it to the Synchro guy?
The planner can send it isolated over to the guy who's got Synchro. He either sends over a file in either XML format, you can save it in Power Project or XER, and then send it over into Synchro.
Yeah, that's the point though. If you're using Primavera and you want to synchronize, it either has to be on the machine or on a network that it can link to with an API to get proper synchronization.
And it says if you change the program in
If you change the
Synchro.
program, or change anything here, and you want to synchronize it with the Primavera master model, you have to have it either on your machine or on a network drive which you have a link to via an API, so it connects up. I don't know, who uses Primavera here? I think a lot of you realise if you've got a copy of Primavera and you copy a copy of that project, it changes certain files in there. So it then becomes separate. So you have to make sure you're always linking with the master one, otherwise it can screw up because of the way Primavera works. Just make sure you've got connectivity.
So I know it's not a Q&A section, but I think it's important this to jump in with regard to the same Microsoft project, where it when you insert or delete an activity in Microsoft project, it doesn't keep the activity ID number, it keeps changing. So is that an issue for Synchro if you're importing and exporting? Because it will forever change your activity ID numbers. How does Synchro know which logic to keep?
Basically, in Microsoft Project, I understand where you're coming from, Eugene, you sometimes do have that in Microsoft Project. But with Synchro though, is that what happened is that you bring in, if you do change an activity from Microsoft Project, you then change it in Synchro. Okay, change that activity in Synchro and then review the logic as well. But I understand where we're coming from. If it's an API between Microsoft Project and Synchro, that'll work brilliantly, like, you know? But I'm not too sure if that's certain or not. You know?
You just mentioned two platforms for importing 3D views, DWF and DWG. Neither of them are BIM software kind of import extent file extensions. I presume it imports Revit and AutoCAD and all of those files.
Yeah, Revit files. Also, I'll go through the different types of file actually a bit later on. Yeah, we'll be actually import and export in. Okay. DWF files. What we're doing here is that we're actually selecting the importation of the 3D model. So we have these different types of DWF files, which are created obviously separately, like, you know, but overlaid with the architect. We can have M&E, we can have structural, and then we can also have architectural as well. Okay, so we actually import this file in. So when we actually import the file in, okay, we click import, and I must point out here as well, what is I find a lot of with importation is that 3D objects. I saw the gentleman at the back a bit earlier. Is very important about specification, about what 3D objects are like, you know. A lot of people put 3D objects into a drawing and they might not give it a name or anything, but when we actually look at 4D, 5D, 3D objects, specification is critical. Okay, so I just wanted to bear that in mind as well. Okay. So what we're doing is that when we actually bring in these 3D objects, we're actually turning them over into creating what we call a resource. Okay, so they come in as a 3D object and they also come in as a resource as well, because we have to turn them into something, okay, in the world of 4D as well. So what we're doing is that we import the 3D model in, we're entering resource details, there's a company name like JCB for example, we're giving it the name, the actual name is hoist and it's equipment, okay, but also as well it could be location, it could be material as well, in the world of 4D as well, okay. Now what we actually do in here is that we actually taking the 3D object, like so, and they're actually going to turn it into a resource, okay? And this is where we're actually going to cross a sort of a threshold, and we're actually going to go into the world now from an architects and engineers and M&E engineers world over into on-site, okay? And this is where, you know, this is where BIM goes brilliantly, like, because we can now you know, we're now into a realm where architects and engineers can now work with actual contractors as such. Okay, so what we've done, we've actually brought in this 3D model now, and we can see all the 3D objects. We can see tower cranes, which obviously contractors use to build it. We can see a piling rig here as well, and then we can also see cabins as well. We can see the hoarding around there. But obviously what we can see as well is that it doesn't quite look right, because we have a bulk excavation in here as well. And that bulk excavation is being turned into another model as such as well, a single file format as well. But sometimes this particular model here, it'll actually show, when we do excavation, it just shows it going out in one lump. Okay, where on site it doesn't actually happen like that. We actually have to look at access and egress, logistics, and the like for actually getting on site. And a lot of people here in the world of contracting would, you know, obviously you know that a lot of projects now built in Dublin, you know, they're very tight, like, you know, and also in London as well. So, you know, logistics and all that sort of stuff is very important, like. So that's our 3D model in there. Okay. Is there any questions so far? This is before we go any further.
At this stage of import the model, and there's no tie between the program and the model at this stage. No.
Not a moment, no.
Two
no.
separate.
Two separate things, yeah. Remember, as I said before, Synchro is working as a third-party software. It's bringing in the Gantt chart, and it's also brought a 3D model. All we're going to do is that we're going to link up 3D objects back up to activities. Okay. So we actually, and then when we run what we call a focus time.
Just as a point, on IFC file, so if you're creating IFC, you can actually create the schedule in your IFC file. Now, if you bring in an IFC file, it'll automatically put the schedule up there, so it doesn't look up. So.
Okay, so there's our 3D model as such. We just brought in, imported into the system. Okay, so it's easy to use as well, where we can assign tasks as well to each 3D object. Okay, so we got this one highlighted here, which is a tower crane activity, and we have install tower crane and we have remove tower crane. Okay, so obviously we're going to install a tower crane before we look at doing the substructure, and we're going to remove it once we finish doing all the M&E plant equipment as such on the roof and all the heavy lifts as well. We're also looking at on this slide here, what we're doing is looking at selecting a task. Okay, so this is where we get into the interlinking. Okay, we're actually looking at selecting a task, which is this one here, which is install site offices, and there's our site offices as well on the actual model. So these have been architecturally built up as well. We then select the resource. Remember before we talked about where we brought 3D objects in, we then turn into resources. So now we've actually selected the resource. So on my machine, what I would have done is right mouse click, I would have selected these 3 cabinets here, and I would have then also selected as well the actual install site office activity. So there's a thing here called user profile as well. And what I can do on user profiles, this is very important, is in the world of 4D, I can actually do temporary, or I can do remove, or I can do install, and this sort of stuff. Okay, so this is where, you know, we start to get into other dimensions as well. So by using the profile, I've now actually going to link up this cabin to the install site offices by using assign to selected tasks. Okay, so I'm going to assign that to that task up there. Now, as you can see now, the resource disappears as it is before the due date. Now, when we say before the due date, okay, there's a little red line there. Can everybody see that? Little red line up there going down. That little red line there going down is called the focus time. And what it does, it slides up and down there, up and down the time scale. And what it does is that every time it actually hits an activity, okay, it makes contact with it, by using the user profile, it either goes install or remove. Okay, so down, obviously, this focus time here would have actually touched on that activity and that resource, and it says install it. But obviously, we're already coming to it. We're coming down to install services here, so it hasn't happened. But once that red line moves across and it touches that activity, it then becomes installed. And the same goes for the piling rig as well. The piling rig here, when it goes over a set of piles in the ground, it actually goes from pile to pile, and it can actually move, so it can move all the way along as well. Okay, tower crane as well. The tower crane can come in as user profile as install, or can go in as remove as well. Okay.
The important thing with things like tower cranes, they are a resource. So you just bring one model in and there's your crane. And as you move it around to where you need it, you build up how many days you need of that resource. So if it's needed, it overstays its time because of a problem, then you can extend it, which will then show you the impact of why that crane is still in where it should, or in that position. But you're just using the one resource, so you can see it physically move around the site. And that's when you can use clash detection, which we're going to say, well, hang on, I've got a crane here and I've got another one here at the same time. I mean, how many people are on sites where the site huts have been put in first thing, and then 10 months down the road you have to move the site huts because someone forgot you have to dig a trench through there. You know, this way you can plan out and make sure it goes in the right place in the first time.
Very good. So obviously back to the focus line again, resource appears and the colour code denotes installation. Okay, so that's our focus line one here, is touch the activity, selected it, install surfaces, and it appears. Okay. So resource appears, colour indicates completion. So when it goes from green and it goes back to its normal colour, it means it's completed. Yeah, so what we have as well in the Synchro as well is that we can do a thing called auto matching. Okay, so when we bring in a 3D file in to the actual system, it can actually create activities as well of 1 day activity, 1 day duration. Now these 1 day duration activities are automatically linked back into the actual, from a 3D object back up into the Gantt chart. So if you have control over how the 3D modeler and the planner name their models and tasks, you can use auto matching to assign models to tasks. Do you just want to touch on that, John?
Yeah, as it said, what this allows you to do is to bring in the model, bring in the schedule, and automatically link together, which you can go to the next page. It's great if everyone calls a window, and it's window 1, window 2. But we do have the ability to write algorithms so that you can cross-relate to different ways that it's working, so that you don't have to have it absolutely exactly right. And it's been used on quite a few projects now by companies who have worked out their own algorithms so that whatever the architect or mechanical services are using as their numbering system, they can relate it back to their schedule. But it does save a lot of time, obviously, to get that right. So you can bring it in, click, bang, and if it doesn't bring everything in, you just move that timeline back, and anything that's still sat there in thin air, you can click them in manually. But it does mean it saves a lot of time. But it does need a lot of planning up front. And we have some rather large companies, big companies, who are actively looking at this so that they get, who have control. I mean, this is possibly an issue. Some of you don't have control over what everybody's doing. But if you can get to that point, we can make your life even easier.
Okay. So just look on at when we actually linked all of the activities up, we can then look at we can also look at the different things like communications, how we actually communicate how the actual project is going to be built in real time. We can also look at value engineering as well, and we can look at site safety and also logistics. So there's a lot of stuff we can do as well in the virtual reality world of being stuck in an office and actually looking at all this stuff coming together and then going out on site and actually making it work. I mean, for me, it's the safety really on sites. Where we can actually see, when we actually see a building being created in 4th dimension, we can actually see falls from height where we need scaffolding. So that's a real sticker for me, that is, like, you know, that's a really, really important one. So you can see we can open up different windows as well of the actual 3D model. For example, here we have three number windows open. Also as well in Synchro, what we can do is review live progress versus actual progress. Okay, so this is fundamental for contractors and how they actually deliver projects. And this is what we're getting now, talking about the IPD stage, where we're taking in architecture, engineering and structural engineering, and what we're doing is that we've got our activities all being undertaken by the contractor, okay, under his contract, and then we have on the model format, and let's say, for example, this is progress on site. What we have here, I think just to see it, this is our what we call a baseline. Okay, written down here. These are all baseline activities, and that's what the contractor planned to do contractually. Here we have a delay. And what has happened is that we can see that the baseline activities have been impacted. And we can see the activities being pushed out. And obviously the contractor would be looking here for an extension of time of I think about a week and a half, 2 weeks, like, you know. And what we also have as well is that we can see the actual delay of the onto the model. So what we have here is that this is what he planned to do, and this is what has actually happened. So there's going to be a lot of it. There's going to be a lot of problems here on this side, as you can see. And how he brings that back via acceleration or by value engineering it, the problem out, who knows? But obviously he's looking at this at a construction stage. But if we actually look at design and build stage in projects, a lot of contractors now are doing design and build. If you can actually, what you can actually do is that you can put in your design and build activities, for example, architecture, structural, M&E engineering, and if there's any problems, say like for example late information delays, etc., etc., you can actually see the actual impact on the model as well when it's supposed to commence on site.
One of the other things, of course, is with Synchro, you've got that delay, but you can then start moving bars around and moving bits around and saying, well, what if we do this and what if we do that? And then you can just run the scenario to see what impact that might have 2 months down the line. Because that's the important thing. On a site, once you start the project going, you know, your head's, I've got to get this project done. And you firefight issues. So you go in and something's happened, yeah, let's do that, let's move on, we'll do that. You don't really look at it and think, well, how's that going to affect my project 6 months down the road? Because you're just more... With Synchro, you can make that change, then run the scenario and think, no, can't do that because it's going to cut something up here. So you can go back and then move it around until you get the scenario right. So you know that 6 months and 10 months, what you decide today isn't going to have an impact because you can see visually that there's an issue and then start working around it.
What I want to do here, I just want to show you a baseline comparison on the video as well. But my computer seems to be getting a bit slow for some reason. Just bear with me 1 second. Has anybody got any questions anyway so far?
Just do you have to have a huge amount of collaboration between, I suppose, architecture, structure, in terms of even file formats and in terms of how they set up, like an architect may set up a specific type of a master copy, like to make it efficient, would they not really want to be integrated at an early stage?
Yeah. All I'd say to that is that there's a great case study on the Autodesk headquarters, okay, and it's on the and it's all about incentives, okay. So obviously, what in America now, the American Institute of Architects have a BIM contract, and what they look at it as is that everything is incentivized by using BIM. So what is key though is actually getting architects, BIM enabled architects in from the very beginning within the process. So what I'd say is that with a lot of clients now going down the BIM route, they need to look at a BIM enabled contractor who can do the 4D, the 5D, and they also need to be obviously working the 3D as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, are we not a fair bit away from that currently?
Not really. The technology is there. The technology is there. Now, what's most important is a BIM execution plan. And the BIM execution plan is what happens is that we actually take in all of the architecture and also structural engineering and also the M&E engineering, okay? And there's actually a pathway what we follow to actually get to the end product, and that's an execution plan is critical.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Really, you have to nearly set up like in QSing a standard measurement, a standard means and way of inputting information from all.
But I'm glad you brought that up because what I can see in the future, personally, is that there's going to be people called BIM managers, okay, and BIM managers are going to manage the process from architecture, structural, engineering, construction, closeout, you know, and even facilities managers as well. So, it is early days. As regards to percentage of what the industry is using over here in America, McGraw-Hill report is one to look at for that. Okay.
Sorry, the last thing you said about McGraw?
Yeah, there's a McGraw Hill. There's a company called McGraw Hill in America, and they've run a study on the usage of BIM in America, and also I'm not too sure they touched on Europe as well.
Some of the differences were in the States, BIM has been driven by contractors. In Europe, it's been driven by architects and engineers. And the other issue in the States is that a lot of contractors are implementing BIM and they're using it for means and methods. So they're building their own BIM model, they own their own BIM model, they build it as they want to build it. I mean, in a lot of instances on bigger projects, it's only worth a contractor's time to build a model himself from the 2D or information he gets from architects and engineers. There's IP issues around BIM models from some architects and engineers.
Yeah.
I have to say in the UK, just on that, we have a subgroup within our organisation which actually does that for constructors, because a lot of architects still draw in 2D, so we take the 2D and create 3D models.
So I'm just wondering, how is the model updated to reflect what's happening on site? How do you input the data that half roof is built as opposed to 3/4?
Yeah. Basically, what happens is that your 3D objects, each resource here, which is a 3D object, is linked back to an activity. So what we do is that we have a where's my little red thing? It's in my pocket. We have what we have is that we would put on here actual start and actual finish dates of each 3D object. Say, for example, take a concrete slab. We'd have an actual start date and an actual finish date. And if it hasn't finished, we give it a % complete as well. Okay? And what happens then is that the actual concrete slab, you then see it being built in real time, like, you know, compare plan versus action. And what normally happens on site is that a planner would update that, or project manager as such. Okay.
Yeah. What does the software cost?
Jumps in early.
Particularly for SMEs. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't get the euro price, but in pounds sterling, it's £3,500.
That's a real kind of bottleneck for many SMEs. You know, one looks at, say, products like Google SketchUp that are free to use. Yeah. I mean, one of the missions we have in the Alliance is to try and make software sort of accessible to SMEs. And the two big costs are the purchase of the software and the ongoing training costs. And we're doing things in the training area with the SkillNet project, but that could be a barrier for many companies. The fact that and that's a per license.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you have a kind of a smaller version or a baby version, or because a lot of these tools, I mean, they're very heavy applications, and one might not use all of the various functionality?
Yeah, well, the answer is no. I mean, we do have a viewing version, which is called Express, so that if you've got a client who needs to be able to see what's going on, you can send in the Synchro file so they can view it and see the actual action. And they can make comments and send back on, but they can't edit it. But the actual Synchro product is all-encompassing.
We have a number of vendor members, and actually only very recently one of the BIM vendor members we have released free software to the market, and they're a major player and they're a big player. Now I don't know how they're making money, but there must be other ways to training. But so that's a real powerful message to the industry. You know, if you want to use BIM, perhaps it's free for a period of time, 6 months, whatever. Because people, in order to get into this, they have to buy the software, they have to train themselves. So I think vendors should really look at that part of, if you want to get the momentum moving, you know.
Well, I mean, we do give trials. I mean, we do give trial periods, not open-ended, but
yeah.
We do give people the opportunity to use it as a trial for one project, depending on what it's.
But if a large enough number of people came to you, say as a consortium, say through the Alliance, if enough architects came to you and engineers came to you in bulk, so you might look at, would you look at some? Yeah. Okay.
So I through project price, I linked the activities to the actual BIM model.
Okay.
Could you go through that again?
Yeah, that's all that, yeah. What I'll do is...
If you go through this and then we go to a live project.
Yeah, go to a live project, yeah. This one is a, just want to show you this one here. This is just bit of a 4D session, like, you know, on the actual this is Indian River Bridge. America, John, isn't it? This one is in America, yeah.
And as you see here, one of the areas is important. You see over to the left, there's a lay-down area. So one of the critical parts is where are they going to put all the bits to build this bridge, because it didn't have a lot of area. So it was important that they were able to coordinate bits coming in and items going out on site, which is as important as actually building it.
So you can see the focus time at the bottom, which is going along, and that's actually touching each activity. So on this cantilever bridge. So this is our focus time here. This blue line down here is actually our progress line. So you can just see it spinning along. Okay. And that's our activity, which is touching on our 3D object. And obviously the way this bridge is built as well is it's all constructible, so you can see it broken down segments as well. And that's the thing about constructability as well. With actually, you know, with architecture and structural engineering, it has to be made constructible as such, like, you know. That's why a BIM manager would obviously oversee that. Okay.
Is there much uptake, or is it generally left to the contractor to use the Synchro?
In Ireland, what I'm finding is that there's a lot of tender requirements on the 4D from contractors, not from the clients, not from the architects. But what I'm finding though is that there is interest now out there for actually delivering projects in BIM using 4D and 5D methodologies as such. And as regards to UK, UK and Australia are very popular in doing the 4D, 5D stuff. So, you know, it is down to clients as such. I do, you know, architectural as well. I don't see why not. Like, and obviously the technology's there, like, you know. So if architects are designing more and more in 3D, then it's just a case then of actually giving that model to the contractor at tender stage, so he can actually show you how he's actually going to build that building. And one contractor might build it differently from another. You never know, like, and obviously that's going to have an impact on prelims. He might actually find to value engineer different parts of the model as well, which would obviously be favourable towards the tenders. You know, obviously the submission mode. But as regards to
can you integrate it with the financial model?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. You see, the thing is, like, obviously with obviously there's a PQS. And I discussed this earlier with the gentleman at the back there, is that the problem is, at the moment, is that with SMM7 and the way bill of quantities are done by PQSs, it's, whenever they take, say for example, a substructure level on an RC frame building, they'll give it, say for example, 3,000 cubic concrete. Okay? Now, in BIM land, 4D as such, you have to break that down, like, you know. Okay, so with the financial model has to be a constructible model as such. However, there is, you know, you can do quantity takeoff in 3-dimensional software out there. I do another software which does that. And also, you can actually, once you have that information where you're going to quantity take off on a model, you can put in the financial information to each activity as well, or from a contractor's point of view, and also that can be compared against the overall project as well. Okay. Is there any more questions, please? No? Okay. This one here, I know we're going away from the PowerPoint slides, but I'll be a bit caught for time. This one here is a live project, 7 Trent in the Coventry. It was opposite the Synchro offices, but until Synchro moved to another location. But just to answer this gentleman again about the activities, what we have is that we take a 3D object as such. Like, I'm just going to stick that one there, that gable of that building. What I've done is I've selected a 3D object, okay? And you can now see that 3D object is there. Okay? So that 3D object there is there. Okay, because so it's called site building. It has all the information in there as well, the 3D object information. And it would be linked to an activity up here as well. So just to go back to what you were querying before, we take that 3D object there, and then I would automatically link that to the object which may say demolish or something like that, you know, demolish that building, you know? Okay, so is that, you understand that now? Is that clear?
Yes, and just wondering what format is the 3D model in that case?
Oh, the 3D model, that was being Revit.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the DWF wouldn't have any intelligence to live with that. That's all.
Well, give us the 3D.
Okay. Okay, so that's sorry, John.
There's a format called DWFX which brings all of the IFC and all of the Revit model, all of them 3D definition across, and it's a lightweight format. You know, it has all of the information in the model. It'll take it in DWFX.
Yeah.
Well, we have quite a raft of file formats that we can bring in. You know, Bentley, most AutoCAD files, CATIA, if you're into engineering.
From experience, which imports work best, which formats?
Well, the main Bentley ones and the main files, they all work well. On AutoCAD, we tend to go for DWF, but they all work very well. We have no restriction.
There is one issue you have with IFC that converting from different formats, you can have some information can change. We say coming from Revit with mass bodies, you can have information issues there, stuff not coming across. So I mean, it's just to be aware that you need to check your IFC export against your original model.
Yeah. IFC is not perfect.
Just on the screen here, you can see the different types of files: DWG, DXF, DWFX, and Hoops, HSF, SketchUp files, MicroStation, and .jt files as well. Okay, so those are different types of files.
Didn't have CATIA.
CATIA as well. Yeah, not enough for me.